Welcome to the podcast, Let the Prophet Speak. Today we are doing Isaiah Yeshayahu 54. That's chapter Nun Daled, chapter 54 of Yeshayahu. Just the last chapter, we were discussing the reaction of the people of the world to the redemption of Israel. And this chapter changes focus to the speaker is different, and who he is speaking to and about is different. The speaker is now God speaking through his prophet Yeshayahu, and he is speaking to Zion, or Jerusalem. We've had this, this pattern, and this is simply the way Yeshayahu has been writing since the beginning of this book. The pattern of changing back and forth from chapter to chapter, from verse to verse, between who the object is and who the subject is. And like I continue to explain, it's crucial to understand each chapter. So now we're listening to God himself speaking, of course, through his prophet Yeshayahu. So chapter 54, verse 1. Roni akara lo yolada. Sing out or shout out, akara, you barren woman who has not given birth. The reference to Jerusalem as a barren, as a woman, and her children or lack of children, reminds us of the chapter that we read not that long ago, 49. And I'm going to go back a little bit to read that to you so that you can get the context. I'm going to refer back to chapter 49 because this is kind of a continuation of that. So in 49 verse 14, we had Zion speaking herself and saying, Vatomer Zion, Zion said, Azavani Adonai, God has forsaken me, Vadonai Shechechani, and God has forgotten me. And then God responded, Hatishkach Isha Ula, does a woman forget the one who she birthed? Mirachem ben Bitna, does she stop having mercy on the one who was a product of her womb? And God said, no, I don't forget. And God said, Miharu banayach maharsayach, that your children have left you, but your children will come back. And we're going to go back to that, reading that. Od yomru v'aznayach b'nei shikulayach, the children who were yours but are gone, they will one day come back, and so on and so forth. So this is really a continuation of that chapter, so it's important to bear that in mind. And God is now saying that, comparing Zion, or Jerusalem, or the entire land of Israel, to a barren woman who has no children because her children are lost, they're gone, they're in exile. Pitzchi rina v'tzahali lo chala, burst out in song and rejoice. For lo chala, for you have not had, or you do not have suffering. Lo chala, we've had this term many times, the ches lamed shoresh root, where it could mean the birth pangs, and in other words, so be happy, you who has not given birth. Again, looking at Jerusalem as a woman without child. Ki rabim b'nei shomema, because rabim, there are many, those that are the sons of the one who is shomema, and I'm going to translate that in a minute, mibnei be'ula, are even more than those who are the children of the woman who has be'ula, meaning who has cohabited or has had relations, and specifically here meaning and has had children from other men. Amar Adonai, so says God. In other words, your children, even though you are the desolate one without children now, but your children are more than the children of the others. I want to point out that some of the commentaries explain it, Rabim b'nei Shomem, your children are more than the children of the other nations. It's hard to imagine that that's the right translation, because under no circumstances has the Jewish people ever, or will ever, in any practical sense, outnumber the children of the other nations. Therefore, I'm going to emphasize what I'm going to emphasize throughout this parak, that the children of Zion here are not the children of Israel specifically, but the children of Israel plus all of those other nations who join Israel in the future time to come to Zion. In the spirit of what we had before in Yeshayahu, v'noharu elov kol hagayim, all of the children will come to Zion to worship God. And those are the children that's being referred to here. Therefore, ki rabim b'nei shomei, the children who are redeemed, the ones who come, the children of the one who was desolate, right? Of all the oppressed people, right? Those are the ones who are much more than those that will be destroyed, those that will be lost. If we look back in Parak Aleph in chapter 1, verse 7, we find the following language. When it says Artsechem Shimama, right? Your land, right, is Shimama. We see that same language over here, Rabim B'nei Shomema. And over there we were talking about the land of Jerusalem, which is Shamam. And the end of that parak ended with the whole idea that, and just give me 1 second, and ended with the idea of this is really important. That and many nations will come. Let's come to the mountain of God, El Beit Elohei Yaakov, and so on. Because out of Zion comes Torah, Dvar Adonai Mishalayim, and the word of God comes from Jerusalem. In other words, the land of Jerusalem was called Shamam, and the Rabbim, the many people that came to her, are the many, many nations of the world that came to her. And therefore, Rabbim b'nei Shomei Ma mibnei Be'ulah is actually realistic. We're going to see some more references to the first chapter shortly. So let's continue with verse 2. Harchivi mekom alech. Widen the place of your tent. In other words, widen it. No longer will you be just a tent for the people, the residents of Zion, even just for the Jewish people, but rather widen your tent. And this tent is a reference to the tabernacle, to the Mishkan. As we know from the verse, Ki beiti beit tefillah l'chol ha'amim, my house is a house of prayer for all of the nations. That's what we're going to see in this verse. V'yiriot mishkanosayach. And the yiriot, which is a reference to the yiriot, which is the cloth wall panels that surrounded the tabernacle of the Mishkan, of the Mishkanotayach, of the places where your tabernacle. Widen the tent, widen the Mishkan, widen it. It's no longer just for a people, but it's for everyone. Yatu al tachsochi. Mishkanosayach yatu. Open up your tabernacle. Al tachsochi. Do not be stingy. Open it up wide and big. Let everyone in. Ha'arichi mesorayach. Lengthen the ropes that tie it down. Visedosayach. Like we have the Yesedos, the stakes that held the Mishkan, that held the tabernacle. Chazeki, make them strong so you can have a big building and let everyone in. This is crucial. This is really, really important. Let it in. Let's look back for a moment. The same reference, if we look at chapter 5 of Yeshayahu, verses 5 and 6, where it discusses I think I made a mistake there. It's not 5, it's actually chapter 4, verses 5 and 6, which I wanted to read, where it talks about God is going to create an anan, a cloud, which is the same cloud that was over the Mishkan, which is going to surround the area. That was at the time in the future when God brings the world to Zion. So let's continue to verse 3. Ki yamin u'tzemol tifrotzi, because you are going to spread out to the right and to the left across the entire world. V'zarech goyim yirash, and your children right? Your children, meaning the children of Israel, will incorporate many, many nations. V'arim nishamos yoshivu. And those cities which are destroyed, Shemama, from the same language we used before, Yoshivu, they will all settle. Now, Zarech Goyim Yirash, I want to go back. Let's look at chapter 11 for a moment. Chapter 11, verse 10 and 11. It's important for us to understand that it will be in that day in the future, the root of Jesse, in other words, the Messiah himself, will stand as a sign to all the nations. In the Elov Goyim Yidroshu, all of the nations will search for him. His resting place, meaning Zion, will be an honor. Yosif Adonai. He will gather the people from everywhere. And again, in 14, in Yudalid, Parak Beis, we see a similar idea. Verse Beis. And the same language, we're referring to those other nations, right? Those Amim, hitnachalum Beit Yisrael al admat Adonai. And the children of Israel will take them as an inheritance, right, upon the land. They will settle them upon the land. So again, we see that same language. So then let's continue to verse 4. Al tiri, do not be afraid. Kilo tevoshi, for you will not be embarrassed anymore, God says to Zion. V'al tikol me, and do not be ashamed. Kilo tachbiri, you shall no longer be disgraced or stepped upon. Kivoshet alumayach tishkachi, the embarrassment that you had when you were young, you shall forget about it. Shall be far in the past. V'cherpat al menusayach, and the shame that of your widowhood when you lost your children, lo tizkriod, you shall no longer remember. Let's go back for a moment to chapter 51, verse 17, where we have the idea as follows. Hitori, kumi Yerushalayim, get up Jerusalem, asher shatit mi Adonai et kod chamaso et kubat kosatari loshet. Right, it talked about over there the embarrassment that people had stepped upon you. People didn't respect you. Vatasimi cha'aretz kevech, in verse 23 there, and they made you like they made your body like the land and stepped all over you. But no longer will that be. That's what he's saying in verse 4 now. Kibo alayech osayech, because the ones who own you are the ones who created you. In other words, the one who owns you, which is me, God. I am the one who created you. Adonai Tzvaos Shema. And who is that? That is the God of hosts. That is me. V'go alech. And your Redeemer is Kedosh Yisrael, the Holy One of Israel, which is Elohei Chol Haaretz Yikoreh, which is going to be called and is called the God of the entire world. Again, the same theme. God is the Kedosh, the Holy One of Israel, and through them he becomes Elohei Chol Haaretz, the God of the entire land. It's true. You were a forsaken woman, and you were sent away, but God has called you back. V'eshet Nurim, the wife of his youth, Kiti Ma'es. Yes, it's true that you were hated and sent away, but you're being brought back. Amar Eloach, so says God. Berega Katon Azavtich, for a short amount of time I did abandon you. However, but with great mercy I shall bring you back. B'shetzef ketzef, in a quick moment of anger, histarti fanai, I hid my face, rega mimech, for just a moment from you. Uv'chesed olam, but with kindness that lasts forever, richamtich, I have mercy on you. Amar go'alech Adonai, so says your Redeemer God. Verse 9, ki mei Noach sosli, because this is just like the waters of Noah. Just like I swore back then, at the time of Noah, I swore never to destroy the world again with the flood. The same thing here. This was a quick moment of wrath. I similarly swear never to get mad at you again, and never to abandon you, Jerusalem, God says. Because the mountains may move, and the hills may shake. There might be earthquakes, there might be thunderstorms, there might be hurricanes. However, my favor, my kindness will never leave you. Uvrit shlomi, and the promise of my peace, the covenant of my peace, lo tamut, shall never move away, shall never slip away. Amar merachamech Adonai, so says God, the one who has mercy upon you. Now to verse 11. Ani yaso ara lo muchama, you who is tossed in storm and impoverished, lo nuchama, who doesn't get relief, who doesn't get comforted. Hine anochi marbitz bapucha v'nayach, I will lay down your stones, bapuch, as carbuncles, bisatich besapirim, and I will make your foundations out of sapphire. I will build you out of beautiful, beautiful stones. Bisamti kadchod shimshosayach, and I will make your protective walls out of rubies or some other precious stone. Usharayach lavnei ektach, and your gates will be made out of precious stones. V'chol gvulech lavnei chayfetz, and desirable, expensive stones will be surrounding all of you. Will build your boundaries. V'chol bonayach, and all of your children will be limudei Adonai, will be people who are those that are learned of God, those who know of God, those who are aware of God and what He means. V'rav shalom bonayach, and what kind of people are those? Those are the people that are great in peace. Your children will be Rav Shalom, will be full of peace. Those are the children that know God. Those are the children that will populate you. And then, just to remind you, if we look back for a moment, chapter 1, verse 27, all the way back in the beginning, Isaiah told us what it is that Zion needs, what it is that Zion wants, what it is that will redeem Zion, and that was Tzion b'mishpat tipodeh. Zion will be redeemed with justice. V'shavel b'tzedakah, and those who return to it, those are the people we're talking about now. B'tzedakah will come back with tzedakah, and that's why verse 14 starts, B'tzedakah tikonani. It is with righteousness that you shall be reestablished, just like He said back then. If we look also in chapter 30, verse 12, Lachein ko amar, Kidosh Yisrael yan ma'aschem hadavar hazeh. Why were they people thrown out of Vativtechu ba'oshek b'noloz? That what got them thrown out of Jerusalem? It was when they had faith in Oshek, and when they did too much in the thieving and stealing. However, now rachaki me Oshek, you will be distanced from that kind of behavior. Kilo tira, you will no longer be afraid. Umimachita, and from fear you will no longer have. Kilo tikra v'elayach, will not come closer to you. This next verse, verse 15, is difficult to translate. There's several translations. I'm going to choose the translation of the Even Ezra here. It uses the word gor yagur. Gimel resh has many different possible meanings. It could mean fear, yaguru, which we find in the Shira regarding the people of Moab that were afraid when the Jews were redeemed from Egypt. Was the language yagur. Yagur could also mean to gather things together, but it could also mean to reside, and it can also mean a stranger. It all depends on the context. And the various interpretations of this pasuk are different. I'm choosing the second parish in Even Ezra, which explains as follows. Just give me 1 second here. Kigor yagur, right, which means that these are the words of the Even Ezra. Birshmi sheyagur imcha ger ba'aretz shehu shaliki emrshusi mishiyitzu lagur imcha ba'artzi. That it's referring to living. It's referring to those that come to live. If you translate like the Even Ezra, then the meaning of the pasuk would be as follows: Hingor yagur, behold, those that choose to live shall live. Efes meosi, right? They will not be able to live unless it is with your permission and the way you want them to live. Migar itach, he who chooses or they who choose to live with you, alayach yipol, will fall upon you, meaning they will fall to your jurisdiction. You will be the ruler over how they live. And how does Zion want people to live in Zion? Well, this is an idea that Yeshayahu has told us on numerous times. One pasuk verse is what we said before when we quoted Zion b'mishpat tipadeh u'v'shaveh b'tzedakah. Those that come to live in Zion have to come with righteousness and justice. Ki mitzion, we also said in Isaiah earlier on, Ki mitzion teitzei Torah. It is from Zion that the Torah comes, that the way of God, God's way of life, Udvar Adonai Yerushalayim, and the word of God comes from Jerusalem. That's the way to live. We also find in chapter 4, verse 3, also another place where it tells us how Zion wants people to live. If we look for a moment there, we said in chapter 4, verse 3, V'haya hanish'or b'tzion v'anosar b'Yerushalayim kadosh amerlo. Those that live in Jerusalem are those that are kadosh, are those that are holy, as the Malbim stated over there. Ki tzadikim yakulamo. Those people will all be tzadikim. They will all be holy ones, right? And then in chapter 52, we also said in verses 7 and 8. Let me just turn to there in a minute. These are all places where Yeshayahu told us numerous times the kind of people that belong in Jerusalem, the kind of people that Zion wants, are these types of people. Where it said in 52, Manavu al harim ragleim mivaser mashmiya shalom mivaser tov mashmiya yeshua omer l'tzion malach alayach. Who the ones? How beautiful it is upon the mountaintops, the legs, the feet of those people when they come to say, they say the news to Zion, the Zion that the God that Zion has, which is the one who tells of peace, the one who speaks of goodness, the one who speaks of redemption. These are the things, those are the people that will live migari tach alayach yipol. They will live by your rules, the rules of Zion. And then we continue the last two verses. Hinei anochi barasi charash. Behold, God says, I am the one who created the carpenter nafeach be'esh pecham, the one who's able to blow and fan the flames of the smithy that he has to build his tools. Umotzei kli l'maasehu. So that he can go ahead and produce the tools that he makes. V'yonochi barasi mashchis lechabel. And I'm also the one. I'm the one who created the smith. I'm the one that created the fire. I'm the one that gave him the ability to make tools, and I'm also the one that took the ability to make those tools destroy as well. Called kli yutzar alayach lo yitzach. And I'm telling you that any keli, and the vessels that are made by the smith are often associated with swords and knives and weapons and arrows and spears and so on. But I'm telling you, God says, I'm the one that made them. I control who they destroy. Lo yitzlach, they will not be successful. The chol lachshon takumi tach lamishpat tarshi. And everyone, every language, every people that come against you, lamishpat tarshi, they will be made guilty in the justice that is to come. If we look back again at chapter 4, just to remind you real quick, what was this justice? Chapter 4, verse 3. This is the justice that God talks about. Adonai etzoat b'nos Tzion v'temei Yerushalayim nediach mikirba b'ruach mishpat u'b'ruach ba'er. That when it comes time in the future, God is going to wash out all of the garbage from Zion, all of the junk, because He is going to mete out mishpat, justice. That is what God is saying over here in the future time again. La mishpat tarshi. They will be guilty because of the justice that I will mete out. There will be justice, and that justice will be done properly. Those that deserve it will get punished, and those that don't will not get punished and will be rewarded. Over here, just to read quickly from the words of the Malbim on Pasuk Yud Zayin. He describes how the justice of God is justice of the future, where the guilty will be punished and the innocent will be rewarded. Zos nachlat avdei Adonai v'tzidkasam me'itinum Adonai. This is the inheritance of those that serve God, and their righteousness comes from me, so says God. Thank you for listening to chapter 54. Looking forward to studying chapter 55 together.